Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yesterday, every day I'm talking with him. Okay. So what he said is, whatever the notes, I mean, the PPTs or whatever are there, I should send it to him. Then he only will send. Okay. So don't bother about the
Uh,
material. We will send definitely.
okay, ma'am. C2 ma'am sent to Kishore sir. He sent
Yeah.
in group.
Yeah. Yeah.
He shared, ma'am. Shared
Yeah.
in group, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. I have seen that. So my regarding my paper also, that first paper, whatever I have
Okay,
taken, I will share it to you.
okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Shall we start then, students? Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I think they will join later. We will start. So
Okay, ma'am.
today we will complete the whole that ecology part. Okay, whatever is left out. The next week, I think you will be left with the second and third unit where you have a comparative study of vertebrates in one block and comparative study of invertebrates in another block. Okay, so that I mean you'll have continuity. So I thought today I will try to complete the whole ecology part. And if you have any doubts, you can ask. So
Okay, ma'am.
yesterday's class only again we will repeat and then we will try to complete the other half of it today. Okay, if you have any doubts, you can ask. If you're not able to understand or anything like that, if you have any queries, you are welcome. Okay. Now, the day before yesterday, I mean, last week we have started with already ecology. In the, I think, fourth block, you have about ecology. What is ecology? That is ecology and animal diversity. Then you have the aquatic ecosystem and animal diversity. Then what are the different, I mean, biodiversity, conservation of biodiversity, and also the various wildlife sanctuaries, as well as your reserves. Okay, then you have the gene banks and all those things. I mean, the different strategies that we have come across regarding conservation, biodiversity conservation, that is ex situ as well as in situ. So the whole chapter deals with all those things. So yesterday already I have talked about the components of ecosystem, that is a structure of ecosystem and what are the functions of an ecosystem. We'll just go through it once and then we will proceed further. So you already know what is ecosystem. And yesterday we have talked about the structure of an ecosystem. Now, basically, you all know ecosystem consists of two components. They are biotic as well as abiotic component and abiotic component. Now, biotic component include the living organisms, whereas abiotic component include the non-living Biotic component consists of the producers, consumers, as well as the decomposers. Now, the producers we have seen actually they are nothing but they are the green plants because they prepare their own food. The plants prepare their own food. That is the reason why they are also called as the autotrophs. And you all know how the plants produce the food. They actually directly trap the solar energy and then they try to convert that solar energy into chemical energy with the process of photosynthesis, and then they'll produce the what do you say the try to synthesize the food. And in case of the plant species which are present only in the water, that is where the sunlight is not available. So in that case, what these plants do is by the oxidation of the chemicals, they try to actually produce the food or synthesize the food. So that is the reason why they are called as the chemoautotrophs. Whereas when they are producing or synthesizing the food with the help of the sunlight, they are called as photoautotrophs. And when they are trying to produce the what do you say the plants, sorry, the food with the help of the chemical oxidation, then they are called as the chemoautotrophs. So both mean one and the same. So chemoautotrophs, with the process of chemosynthesis, they produce the plant, whereas photoautotrophs produce the or synthesize the food with the help of the photosynthesis. So this it should be clear in your mind. The next is what consumers. Now consumers means they do not prepare their own food. They don't have that capacity, so they depend on the autotrophs for their food, that is the plants, and they get their food by feeding on the other organisms. And here they are classified into different categories, like you have herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and detrivores. Now you all know herbivores, they feed only on the plants, green plants, and hence they are called primary producers. Sorry, they feed on the plant species, that is primary producers. Example, rabbit insects. Carnivores feed on the herbivores and other carnivores. Then omnivores, they feed on both plants as well as on animals. And whereas detrivores feed on the parts of dead organisms, especially here you have these bacteria that is as well as your fungi, earthworms, and also the ants. Now coming to the decomposers. Now decomposers derive their food by breaking down the complex organic molecules. Sorry, detrivores detrivores are nothing but example is now, detrivores example is earthworms and ants. Now, detrivores actually they feed on the parts of the dead organisms. Whereas decomposers, in decomposers, you have got the bacteria and fungi. Sorry for that. So here, now consumers classified into four types, that is herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and detrivores. Now, herbivores are rabbit and insect. You have insects. Carnivores are frog, snake, and omnivores are the humans. And detrivores are the earthworms as well as the ants. Now, decomposers, coming to the last one, they actually derive their food by breaking down the complex organic form. That is, they decompose the what do you say the dead organic compound into simple organic compounds, and finally they convert it into the inorganic nutrients. Example here, the bacteria as well as the fungi. So we can say that the biotic components are classified into three types. They are producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers are the primary producers, they are called as, they are exclusively only the plants. Consumers are classified into four types, and the decomposers are nothing but the bacteria and fungi. Now, abiotic component, you all know, they are classified into two types, physical factors and the chemical factors. Physical factors include all the temperature, wind, soil, water availability, humidity, and all those things, light. Whereas chemical factors include the various nutrients that are present in the atmosphere, like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, pH of the soil, and all those things. So this is all about the, you can say, structure of the ecosystem or the various components of an ecosystem that are found in an ecosystem. Okay. Now coming to the functions of an ecosystem. Now the ecosystems actually see, for the ecosystem to run, there should be an interaction between the biotic as well as the abiotic component. So without this, the environment, or you can say the ecosystem, will not run. So there should be some activity. So that activity actually, how does ecosystem, go for it is with the help of different functional aspects, you can say, or the functional attributes like food chain and food web, energy flow, ecological pyramid, ecological regulation, as well as ecological succession. So there should be an interaction between the biotic as well as abiotic components. So for this, the ecosystem should run. So to run the ecosystem, what are the different functions that are carried by the ecosystem? They are nothing but the food chain, food web, energy flow, ecological pyramid, ecological regulation, as well as ecological succession. Now, you all know food chain. Food chain is nothing but the transfer of food, you can say, or the transfer of energy from the producers through a series of organisms with repeated eating or being eaten. That we call it as nothing but a food chain. Say, for example, grass is there. Now, the grass actually is eaten by a grasshopper. Then, grasshopper in turn is being eaten by frog. Frog is eaten by a snake, and snake is eaten by a peacock. So, like this, the cycle will go on. So, here, food chain, we can define food chain not only the transfer of food, but also the transfer of energy. Okay. This is what is called as nothing but the food chain. Now, there are two types of food chain actually. They are called as grazing food chain and as well as the detritus food chain, or you can also call it as detritus food chain. Now, grazing food chain actually starts from the living green plants, okay, and it goes to the grazing herbivores and then later to the carnivores. So, ecosystems with such type of food chains, they are directly depend on the solar radiation. So, we can say that the food chain in which the ecosystem depends directly on the solar energy or directly depends upon the sunlight for the solar energy. Such type of food chain you call it as grazing food chain. Already we have discussed this. So here most of the ecosystem actually in nature follow this type of food chain. Like you have grass is there, then grass being eaten by rabbit, rabbit is being eaten by the lion. So like this the cycle. So here what is happening? The directly in this type of food chain, the direct sunlight is being taken up or it is being absorbed. So such type of food chain you call it as grazing food chain. So whereas detritus food chain actually here, this chain goes from the dead organic matter into the microorganisms and then to organisms which feed on detritivores. So here such type of ecosystem, they are not dependent on direct solar energy because most of these actually they start in the aquatic habitat. So here such ecosystems are not dependent on the solar energy and chiefly they depend upon the influx of the dead organic matter, which is produced in other ecosystems. So that is the reason why since they are not taking the direct solar energy, such type of you call it as food chain, you call it as a detritus food chain or the detritus food chain. Now here such ecosystems are not dependent on direct solar energy and they chiefly depend upon the influx of dead organic matter. Now here examples is bacteria and the fungi which feed on the dead organic matter and they are eaten by the small fish, again which are eaten or taken up as by the large fish or by the birds. So such type of food chain you call it as detritus food chain or detritus food chain. So two types of food chains, grazing food chain and you have detritus food chain. Grazing food chain is here you can say directly how you can define in a simple languages. In the grazing food chain actually is being present in such type of ecosystems where the food chains actually directly depend upon the solar energy. Whereas in detritus food chain, here the ecosystems are not dependent on the direct solar energy, but they depend upon the influx of the, the dead organic matter which are produced by the other ecosystems. So that is the difference between these two. Now this is all about the food chain. So food chain is nothing but transfer of the food from one organism to another organism, you can say, or the transfer of energy from one organism to another organism. Now, next is you have food webs. Now, food webs is what? A network of the interconnected food chains of different trophic levels in a biotic community is called as a food web. Now, here you mean, what do you mean by trophic level? Now, every organism here is considered as a trophic level. Say, for example, if you take a food chain, like grass you have, rabbit you have, and lion you have. So grass actually is first trophic level, say for example. Rabbit is another trophic level and lion is another trophic level. So each step you can say or level in a food chain, it is called as nothing but a trophic level. So here in the food web is what? It is nothing but a network of interconnected food chains. So it is a complex or you can say a number of food chains together constitute a network. That network you call it as nothing but a food web. So a complex network of interconnected food chains of different trophic levels in a biotic community, you call it as nothing but a food web. So the complexity of any food again depends upon the diversity of the organisms. So each species of an ecosystem, is kept under some sort of a natural habitat. So here see they have given the representation. Now this is actually a food web. Now if you see this figure, now you have a grass. Grass is being eaten by mouse, and again mouse is eaten by a snake, and this snake is eaten by a hawk. So this is one food chain. Likewise, again here grass is there. So grass is eaten by a grasshopper, then grasshopper is being eaten by a hawk here. So like that, again you have a grass is being eaten by a grasshopper. Grasshopper in turn is being eaten by a lizard, and lizard is being eaten. So here you have a number of food chains which are linked together. So such a, what do you say, the interconnection, or you can say a connection, or you can say a network of different food chains, you call it as nothing but a food web. So now the food chain and food web is very, very important. It is an important aspect of a ecosystem because they maintain ecological balance. So they regulate the ecosystem by maintaining a balance. So that is why food chain and food web are an important part or an important function of an ecosystem. Okay. Another category thing is biological magnification. Biological magnification is what? It is nothing but a process in which you have the concentration of the non-biodegradable material and any fertilizer actually will get accumulated in the food chain. So what happens here is, as the humans occupy the highest position in the trophic level, so if they get high biomagnification, if they get definitely they get high biomagnification. So what happens? It will be very, very harmful. So that we need to take into consideration. That is because humans, the ultimate, what do you say, the sufferers will be the human beings. So that is why you have to take into consideration that they are totally, what do you say, degradable. Okay, so they should totally get converted. Then only there will not be any harm to the humans. Okay, so this is the what do you say, the ecosystem functions with the help of the food chain as well as the food web. The next, we have also talked about energy flow. Now, energy flow is what all ecosystems always, you all know, actually are the energy driven complexes. So for an ecosystem to run, then definitely the energy flow should be there. So the energy flow from where it comes? Through the food, consumption of the food. So that is why, so that is the reason why we say the food chain is nothing but it is not only the transfer of food, but it is the transfer of energy. So the energy concerned to ecosystems actually is nothing but the light energy, you all know. So this light energy, I mean the light energy, chemical energy, heat energy, and source of all this is nothing but from the solar energy. So to from the for the ecosystems to run, now the sunlight is very, very essential. So the we get the energy from the solar radiations. So this energy actually gradually it will get transferred to the light energy, then to the chemical energy and the heat energy. So 1% of this total energy which is falling on the plants or which is taken up by the plants and is used for photosynthesis, for the manufacture or for the synthesis of the food. So only 1% of the total energy falling on the plants is used for photosynthesis, they are saying. So this is the only source of energy actually for the proper functioning of the ecosystem. So whatever the energy, I mean the solar energy actually we are getting, it is only in the form of 1%, and that 1% actually it is utilized by the plants for the sake of photosynthesis, and that is only will be helpful for the proper functioning of the ecosystem. The next is what? The fixation of the solar energy by the plants and its utilization in the form of food obeys the laws of thermodynamics. So basically you all know there are two laws of thermodynamics already we have studied, I mean, in our school level. There are two laws of thermodynamics. What are those laws? First law, thermodynamics says that energy can either be created nor it can be destroyed. It can only transfer the energy. Okay, it can only transfer the energy. And second law states that the energy transformation, or you can say that every transformation of energy is accompanied by a simultaneous degradation of energy from concentrated form to a dispersed form. So the flow of energy is unidirectional, only in one direction. It is always in one direction. So we can say, so thus the energy flow, or you can say all ecosystems require energy, and this energy actually is we get it through the solar energy. That solar energy, whatever is get directly, it is taken up by the plants and it is utilized for the photosynthesis, and that is only help in maintaining the proper functioning of the ecosystem. So whatever that energy, that solar energy is being taken up by the plants, it is fixed, and it obeys two laws of thermodynamics. One is the first law and second law. First law says energy can either be created nor destroyed. It can only transfer the energy from one form to another. And second law states that every transformation of energy is being accompanied by degradation of energy. So that means every trophic level, when you're getting, then that energy actually will get reduced. So there is a decrease in the energy and it goes only in one direction. Now, it obeys the energy flow models, they say, that is universal energy flow models, single channel energy flow model, and double channel or Y-shaped flow model. Okay, so this if you can, include, you can eat, otherwise it is not essential. Just you can say that the energy that is actually being taken up by the plants, it is fixed and it obeys two laws of thermodynamics. What are those? First law as well as the second law. Okay. Now, coming to the ecological pyramids. Now, what do we mean by ecological pyramids? Now, ecological pyramid is nothing but the graphical representation of the structure and the function of the trophic levels of an ecosystem. So, I told you every organism, okay, that is being eaten or that is eating, you can say every organism actually in a food chain is considered as a trophic level. So, if we actually represent that, what do you say, the food chain in the form of a representation, graphical representation, that we call it as nothing but ecological pyramid. So graphical representation of the structure as well as the function of trophic levels of an ecosystem, starting with the producers at the top and each successive trophic level forming the apex is known as nothing but an ecological pyramid. So in a food chain, starting from producers to consumers, there is a regular decrease in the properties. That is, see, when you're talking about in a food chain, from the producers to the consumers, so there is always a decrease. Just now we have seen that there is a decrease in the energy. So likewise, not only there is a decrease in the energy, but also there is a decrease in the number of organisms, and also there is a decrease in the biomass. That is the weight of the organisms. So they say that actually in each food chain, okay, starting from producers to the consumers till the last stage, there is a regular decrease in their properties with reference to energy, with reference to biomass, and with reference to the number of organisms. So based on this, actually, so what happens is, since some energy, so based on this, they have classified these ecological pyramids into three types. What are those? One is called pyramid of number, pyramid of energy, and pyramid of biomass. So based on this, so always there is actually a decrease in the energy, decrease in the biomass, that is weight, and also decrease in the number of organisms. Now we'll see what are these three different types of ecological pyramid. So now you have understood now what is ecological pyramid. Yes, students. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Pyramid of number. Now, pyramid of number, it represents the number of individual organisms in each trophic level. So, for example, a grassland ecosystem is there. Now, grassland ecosystem is what will be the producers? Grass in the form of plant. Grass is nothing but a plant, no? So producers are here nothing but the grass. So, grass may be less in small in size, but it will be larger in number. It will be larger in number. So, what happens? They occupy the first trophic level. They occupy the first trophic level. Now, this grass actually is being taken up. So, it is eaten by some organism, no? So, that is eaten by rats in the form of primary consumers. So, they form the second trophic level. So, here, what happens here is the rats are less in number when compared to grass. The rats are less in number when compared to grass. Then this is followed by what? The secondary consumers. Now, here the secondary consumers, you assume it to be snakes, suppose. So, the snakes actually occupy the third trophic level and they are lesser in number when compared to the rats. So, that is what they mean to say here is that the tertiary consumers, okay. After secondary consumers, we can also talk about tertiary consumers. Now, these tertiary consumers are suppose eagles and they occupy the next trophic level, and this is the last trophic level where the number and size of the trophic level will be the least. So likewise, so pyramid of number. So as the food chain goes, okay, so from one trophic level to the last trophic level, you can say what happens, what we are seeing over here is, we are observing here is that there is a decrease in what number? There is a decrease in number because grass, though small in size, they are larger in number. Followed by what? Followed by the rats, which occupies the second trophic level. Then followed by the snakes, which occupy the third trophic level, followed by what? Eagles, which occupy the fourth trophic level. So that means here, in such an ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, we are observing what? That there is an decrease in the what? Number. So such a pyramid, you call it as nothing but pyramid of number. Okay. The next is what? Pyramid of energy. See here, this is a pyramid of number. See, producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. Here they have given an example over here. Okay, this is how. Okay. So now coming to the pyramid of energy. Now, pyramid of energy, what does it do? It says that it represents amount of energy present at each trophic level of the energy flow and productivity at each trophic level. See here, so here what they are saying is, and again, same way at every successive trophic level, there is a heavy loss of energy. That means there is a decrease in the energy. So that means at each trophic level, only 10% is transferred. So hence there is a decrease of energy at each and every successive trophic level as we move from the producers to the consumers. As we move from the producers to the consumers. So here pyramid of, so like pyramid of number, here How do we represent pyramid of energy? Nothing but in the form of the different trophic levels, same way. So here what they are saying is, as the energy flows from one trophic level to another trophic level, the 100%, suppose if 100% energy is consumed, is there, so that 100% energy is not consumed by the other organism which is located at first trophic level. So likewise second trophic level, likewise third trophic level. So there will be actually a decrease in the what the productive the transfer of the energy. So definitely the energy that is consumed by each organism which is present at the successive trophic level will differ. So there it will get lessened. So we can say the pyramid of energy says that there is a decrease of energy at each trophic level, starting from the producers to the consumers. Okay, this is how the pyramid of energy is actually shown. See, this is a pyramid of energy. Like say, for example, producers you have, then you have primary consumers, then you have secondary consumers, then you have tertiary consumers. So see, producers about 10,000 kilocalories energy is there, but when it is consumed by the primary consumer, it becomes only 1,000 kilocalorie. Likewise, secondary consumer only 100 kilocalorie, and tertiary consumer only 10 kilocalorie. So likewise, there will be a decrease in the energy. The next is what? Pyramid of biomass. Now, pyramid of biomass represents the total amount of biomass, here with reference to weight. Okay, so mass or weight of the biological material that is present at each trophic level. So considering this, the example of a forest ecosystem, if you take, so what happens? There is a steady decrease in the biomass from the lower trophic level to the higher trophic level. So for example, producers. Now producers are what? Trees, which contribute a major amount of the biomass. Then the next trophic level is what? Herbivores. Herbivores are like insects and birds, which feed on only the plants. Then you have carnivores like snakes and foxes. Then you have the top trophic level, which consists of the tertiary consumers, like you have lions as well as the tigers, where the biomass is very low. So the pyramid of biomass actually is shown here like this. See, these are the producers, these are the herbivores, then you have primary consumers, and these are the top carnivores, that is the tertiary consumers. So this is about the pyramid of. So only we can infer through this ecological pyramid is that ecological pyramid is nothing but it is what? A graphical representation of different organisms which are present at different trophic, or which occupy the different trophic levels in a food chain, and we represent that in the form of a triangle. That is what why we call it as a pyramid. Okay, now based on the number, so they say that actually at every trophic level there is a decrease in the energy, there is a decrease in the biomass, and there is a decrease in the number. So based on this, they have categorized these ecological pyramid into three different types. They are pyramid of energy, pyramid of number, and pyramid of biomass. Next function of the ecosystem is ecological production. So here the rate of production of the organic matter or the biomass is called as nothing but the productivity. So how it is being produced, we say. So what is the productivity or the production? Nothing but the rate of the production in the form of what? The biomass. Then these are basically classified into two types: primary productivity and secondary productivity. Now, primary productivity is that nothing but the rate at which the radiant energy is converted into organic substances by the plants, either through the mechanism of photosynthesis or by the chemosynthesis. Okay, this is called as primary productivity. This they have classified again into two types. That is gross primary productivity, and you have net primary productivity. Now, gross primary productivity is the rate at which the producers are able to utilize the radiant energy, okay, to produce their food, is called GPP. Whereas hello? Okay. Next is the net primary productivity. Here, the rate at which the energy or the organic matter is stored by a producer after respiration. You call it as NP. So gross is the producers are able to synthesize, or you can utilize the radiant energy to produce the food. This is called as GDP. Whereas NPP is what? The rate at which the energy or the organic matter actually is being stored, or it being reserved, you can say, or preserved after respiration by a producer. You call it as NPP. So thus NPP will be what? GPP minus R. GPP is gross primary productivity minus the respiration loss. You can call it as a net NPP. That is the net primary productivity. Okay. Now coming to secondary productivity, here the energy that is being stored at consumer level for use by the next generation. Then you can call it a next generation, you can say, or the next organisms which occupy the next trophic level, you can say, is called as the secondary productivity. So this is one of the important function of an ecosystem. So what have we have seen? We have seen the important functions. First, we have seen the food chain. Then we have seen the food web. Okay. Then we have talked about the what is it? Energy flow. Then we have talked about the production. Okay. So productivity or production, two types, that is primary productivity and secondary productivity. And the next category is what? Ecosystem regulation. Now, ecosystem itself tries to resist or any environmental stress. You all know actually whenever there is, I mean, the ecosystem is there, definitely there will be a disturbance, or definitely actually there will be some imbalance will be there in an ecosystem. So what is the main role of ecosystem? Then the ecosystem should try to regulate it, should try to actually maintain the equilibrium within the environment. Then only it should balance the environment. Then only the ecosystem actually will work, successfully. Otherwise, then it will lead to the complications. So that is why always there should be a regulation between a biotic community as well as an abiotic community. So ecosystem always tries to, it should try to balance. There should always be a balance for an ecosystem to run, okay, or to get regulated. Then there should always be a balance between the biotic as well as the abiotic community, or you can say there should be a equilibrium should be maintained, okay, between the ecosystem as well as with the environment. So such a property you call it as nothing but homeostasis. So however, what happens, the system will show, okay, the tolerance or it will resist only to up to a certain extent, only up to a certain limit. So that we call it as homeostatic plateau. But beyond that, what happens, it will not be able to do it. So either it may go for negative feedback or either it may go to a positive feedback. So always remember that there should be a balance or there should be a regulation, okay, of an ecosystem. Then only the ecosystem will run smoothly. Okay. If it does not run, then what happens? Then there will be, I mean, the complications will be there. So always there should be maintaining, I mean, equilibrium should be maintained or homeostatic balance should be maintained between the biotic and the abiotic component. Remember, see here, they have given. See, ecosystem functions are ecosystem imbalance. Now, if it is a stress, ecosystem imbalance will be there. Then negative feedback, negative feedback. So if it is balance, it is okay. Then positive feedback, stress. Okay, then here death or collapse will be there. Upper limit, then lower limit, you can balance it. And if it is upper limit, you have death or collapse. So only, it has a limit only up to a certain extent. Okay, that range of tolerance will be there. So beyond that, it may go either to the negative feedback or either to the positive feedback. So ecosystem regulation by homeostatic mechanism is very, very important function of an ecosystem. Okay. Next is what? Ecological succession. Now, any community which tries to maintain the equilibrium, okay, which tries to maintain the equilibrium with the prevailing conditions of the environment is called as ecological succession. So here, what happens is here is it changes with the changing environment. So ecosystem always tries to change with the changing conditions. Sometimes what happens is the activities within the community itself or the environment itself, the changes itself will affect the change in the community. So when there is a change in the environment, definitely the change occurs in a community. So what happens? The activities within a community or the environmental change will have an impact on the community structure. So in such cases, what happens? The ecosystem will try to develop on its own. So that ecosystem development is nothing but called as ecological succession. It is called as ecological succession. So always an ecosystem development or an ecological succession is nothing but it is an orderly process of community development, and it involves the changes in species structure of the community processes. So finally, it ends up in a stabilized ecosystem. So how does this ecological succession take place? Why that ecosystem development will take place? See, what happens is when there is a change in the environment, definitely the environmental change will have an impact on the community. So community will try to develop. It will try to develop and it involves the changes, okay, to develop itself. So it will involve the changes in the species structure and as well as the community processes. Finally, it will end up in a stabilized ecosystem. So such a phenomena you call it as ecological succession or ecosystem development. So any community, if you take, for example, first it will develop as an initial community. Okay, then it will process, go through the different stages. And lastly, it will end up in a final community. So the initial community you call it as nothing but a pioneer community. And in between the transitory communities that they come across, that we call it as nothing but the seedal stages or the developed stages. And when it attains the maximum or the final community, that final community actually which lasts for a very, very longer period, that we call it as a climax community. So we can say the community, when it develops, it undergoes these processes. First process you call it as an initial community. It develops as an initial community, followed by transitional stages, which are also called serial stages, and that will lead finally to a final community, which is called, which lasts for longer duration, and it is called as a climax community. Now, how this succession, ecological succession takes place? What is the process of this ecological succession? We'll see now. So here, the whole process of succession actually is completed, or it consists of these sequential steps. What are those? One is called nudation, then you have invasion, then you have competition and coaction, then reaction, and then stabilization. Now, nudation is what? It is the first development of a bare area. See, where there is no life at all. So the nudation development of the bare area without any life form, will be there. And here, this area will develop only due to the topographic what do you say, characteristics like soil erosion by gravity, water, wind, land, and all those things. Okay. Then invasion is what? So when once the bare area, is developed, so this will be followed by successful establishment of life in that area. Because see, when once the water, wind, everything is there, definitely what happens? The organisms will grow. They will originate. So the next step actually is what? The establishment of the life in the area. In the first instant, there will not be any life form at all. Okay, only the abiotic component will be there. But in the second stage, the biotic component, that is the life forms, will occur. So establishment of a life form will be there in the invasion. So the species actually here reaches this area from other places, okay, due to the force of migration or dispersal and all those things. Okay. The next, competition and coaction. So after aggregation, so they get accumulated. So when once they get aggregated in large numbers, what happens? Definitely there will be a competition for space, there will be a competition for nutrition and all these things. Okay. So then what happens? Now here in this process, what happens is it can be observed, and the species which are unable to compete with others, they will be discarded, and then they will get died. The next is what? Reaction. Reaction actually is the most important stage of the process of succession. Here, the mechanism of modification of environment through the influence of living organisms should be take place. So due to all these things, what happens is the environment is modified, and when once the environment is modified, the organisms which are staying in that particular environment also should react to it, should adjust to that particular environment. So if it becomes unstable, then what happens? Sooner or later, they will get discarded from the community. Only the one which has that capacity, to overcome that, they will survive. Okay. So that is called reaction. Then stabilization is what? Finally, there occurs a stage in the process. Then the final community or the terminal community, you can say, or the climax community, you can say, will become more and more, they become stabilized for a longer period of time, and then it can be maintained the equilibrium with the environment or the surrounding area. So this is how the ecological succession will occur. Any ecological succession, if you take, for example, will undergo through these different steps. That is nudation, invasion, then you have competition and coaction, reaction, as well as stabilization. Now, examples you can take, like you have hydroseed. Hydroseed means water, with reference to water. So this type of succession actually starts in a water body, like pond, as well as it will culminate in a community. Though it starts in a pond, but it will gets climax community, it will reach the forest. So the different stages that it undergoes is, first one is the phytoplankton stage. Now phytoplanktons, you find it only in the water. So these are the pioneer community, mainly blue-green algae diatoms, and bacteria which are present in water. They try to first, occupy the area. The next, you have the rooted submerged stages, then submerged stage, rooted submerged stage. Different types of hydrophytes and rooted hydrophytes will be there. Then swamp stage, sedge meadow stage, woodland stage, and forest stage. So forest stage. So like this, what happens? First, the phytoplanktons will be there. After that, you have these phytoplanktons, because due to the death and decomposition of this phytoplanktonic organic matter, then what happens is the new environment will appear, because of the growth of the rooted submerged hydrophytes like Hydrilla and Elodia. Then this will be again what happens. Now what happens? This is followed by again some more rooted hydrophytes like Nilambo, Trapa, Azula. Then next you have what the amphibious stage, which can live both on plants as well, land as well as in water. So they try to occupy the area. Examples you have Sagittaria, Scirpus, and all those things. Then this is again followed by another what do you say, the category of vegetation like you have Carex, Cypress, and then woods will develop, means marsh and what do you say, woodlands will develop, and lastly it will end up in a forest where you have bigger trees. So that is how, see here, this is how actually the hydrocele will start. Now first one is the phytoplanktons. Okay, these phytoplanktons, they will be floating or submerged will be there. So these phytoplanktons actually will be followed by floating leaf. Then you have the reed swamp. Then you have the marsh meadow. Then you have the woodlands. Then you have the climax, that is the forest. So this is how actually the hydrocele or the hydractyl phase. Next you have lithocele. Now lithocele is also called as xerocele, which actually starts from the rock. Hydrocele starts from the plant, whereas xerocele will start from the rock. So it will start from a bare rock and it will culminate again in a forest stage. So it will again follow different stages. One is called as a lichen stage, that is crustose lichen stage, then foliose lichen stage, then moss stage, then herb stage, then shrub, then forest. Okay, so this is how actually occupied by different. Now see here, this is, they have given things like you have. This is how. So lichen stage, moss stage, grasses stage, shrub stage, and lastly you have the trees or the woodland stage. So this is how actually the lithocele will develop. But remember that hydrocele will start from the plant, from the aquatic habitat, whereas the lithocele will start from the barren rock. Okay. Now next is what, biodiversity and conservation. So already we have gone through. So we'll go fast. So biodiversity is all nothing but the various organisms or the various species actually that occupy the whole biosphere. You quite as nothing but the biodiversity. So the variety and variability among all the groups of the living organisms and the ecosystems. So there are three different levels of biodiversity: genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. Now, genetic diversity occurs within the individual species. So you have actually different species are there. So within the individuals also, you have number of varieties are there. We differ from one another. So, and these differences may be due to the genes, number of genes, okay, or structure of gene, whatever it may be. The next, like rice varieties and all those things. The species diversity you have. Species diversity is a diversity between different species. So you have different species, like you have plant species, animal species, and all those things. That ecosystem diversity, we can talk only at an ecological level or at the ecosystem level. Like you have different types of ecosystems. Like you can take river ecosystem, you can take what do you say, the say for example terrestrial ecosystem, and as well as your aquatic ecosystem. In terrestrial ecosystem you have different types, like you have rainforest ecosystem, deciduous forest ecosystem. So likewise even in aquatic ecosystem you have different aquatic habitats, like you say lake ecosystem, pond ecosystem, ocean ecosystem, river ecosystem. So this is how what is called as ecosystem diversity. Okay, so this is all about the what do you say, different levels of biodiversity. Then values of biodiversity, you all know. Now, because of this biodiversity, because a number of plants as well as the animals actually occupy the whole biosphere, we have, they are very, very important to the humans, not only to the humans, but also to the plants as well as the animals. So these values of biodiversity, we can talk in two different categories. One is called as a direct value and the other one is called as indirect value. Now, direct value of biodiversity, again, classified into two types: consumptive use value and the other one is productive use value. Consumptive use value means we can consume, like, okay. So the consumptive use value is the value placed on nature's products that are consumed directly without passing through a market. Like you have food. So in the form of food, we can take the plants, okay, directly, then fish, then, okay, then fuel directly, since ages forests have provided food as a fuel, wood as a fuel. So that we can take even drugs and medicines, which are being produced from the various medicinal plants and all those things. like in the form of quinine, penicillin, tetracycline, and all those things. Okay. So then high competitive use values. So this we are taking. So this has got direct use value. Now productive use or consumptive food value we can take. Then productive use value means productive use value refers to the products that are commercially harvested and they are sold in the market, like in the form of textile, leather, silk, paper, pulp, and all those things. So all these come under what? Direct biodiversity value. Now, indirect biodiversity values are it will provide benefit to the human beings, supporting the existence of life. So, what is that? Cultural point of view, social point of view, then ethical point of view. Okay, see, biodiversity actually also plays a very important role, and it provides benefit to the human beings, supporting the existence of the biological life. Okay, so these are aesthetic value. Okay, so all these actually are the indirect values of biodiversity. Now, threats to biodiversity. Now, threats to biodiversity, again, you all know, because when we have got a very rich variety of biodiversity, you can say, then we need to conserve it because lot of threat actually is there for the biodiversity because of the habitat loss, poaching of wildlife, and man wildlife conflicts. So that is the reason why we have to conserve the biodiversity. So there are various causes for the threats to biodiversity, like habitat loss is there. How the habitat loss actually takes place because of deforestation, destruction of wetlands, habitat fragmentation, then desertification, then we are trying to extract the raw material, production of drugs, developmental activities. So for that reason, what is happening? We are trying to lose the habitat. So that is one reason. Second is what? Poaching of wildlife. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to kill the animals, okay, or going for commercial hunting for our own benefit. So in that case also, so human population and commercial activities. So we are trying to encroach the forest and we are trying to cut down the wildlife by killing them, by hunting them. So that is also one of the reason for the threat to biodiversity. The next is what? Man wildlife activities. Now man wildlife activities are nothing but where we are trying to actually cause intense damage, okay, and also danger. So because man wildlife conflicts is sometimes what is happening is it is very becoming very difficult for the forest department officials, because the wildlife which are staying in the forest, when if they are trying to what do you say, encroach the human habitat, then it becomes very what difficult. So the forest department, what they are trying to do is they are trying to actually kill the these wildlife so that they will not encroach into the villages, encroach into the nearby what do you say, the habitat where it is being where the actually human beings are living. So that is the reason why man wildlife conflicts also has become one of the threat to the biodiversity. So these are the main things. So factors influencing man animal conflicts, you all know. Why because what we are trying to do, we are trying to encroach the forest. So shrinking forest also will compel the wildlife to move from the outside from the forest. Then second thing is human encroachment into forest area also will actually trying to harm the forest, the wildlife. So that is the reason why wildlife, the animals are coming out of the forest. So injured animals also have the tendency to attack the man. So they are also venturing out of the forest. So there are various reasons actually for this man animal conflict. So that is also uh, has become a threat nowadays for to the biodiversity. Okay. So this is all about. Now coming to hotspots of biodiversity. Now, biodiversity hotspots are nothing but they are the areas that support the natural ecosystems and that are largely intact, and they are what do you say? It is very important to conserve the biodiversity. So here they support the natural ecosystems. So actually there are two criteria. For the establishment of these hotspots and or for determining the hotspots, and they say that actually Norman Myers was the scientist who has introduced the concept of hotspots. And presently they say there are about 34 hotspots are present all over the world. And in India, they say about 3 to 4 hotspots, biodiversity hotspots are there. And overall, about 34 hotspots are there throughout the world. And Norman Myers was a scientist who has introduced this, keeping in view actually the main intention of creation of these hotspots was nothing but to support the natural ecosystem and and to see that actually, because to conserve the what do you say, the wildlife, to conserve the forest and all those things, it is very very essential. So keeping all these criteria in mind, they have introduced this concept of hotspots. The two criteria what they said is it must contain at least 1500 species as endemics. So in each hotspot at least 1500 species should be present, endemic species should be present, and uh, at least 70% of its original habitat, it has to have lost at least 70% of its original habitat should be there. So keeping all these in view, these hotspots actually have been introduced, and hotspots should cover about 15.7% of the Earth's land surface. And today, total hotspot cover is they say it is about 2.3%. Reptiles and amphibians are more prone to the hotspot endemism. So the hotspot, so biodiversity, the major role of this is nothing but to support the natural ecosystems, to support the natural ecosystems. So in India, overall, they said about 34 are there. In India, basically, three biodiversity hotspots are there. Some of the authors, they mention about four hotspots. Now, here they have mentioned only the three biodiversity hotspots. One is Western Ghats, then you have got the Eastern Himalayas, and then you have, I think, the Indo-Burman. Another one is the Indo-Burma hotspot. Now, okay. So now we'll see one by one. So first one is what? The Western Ghats. So the Western Ghats actually is one of the hotspot of India, and it is spread over 6 states of India. They receive high rainfall, and this region shows high species diversity and high levels of endemism. Nearly 77% of amphibians, 62% of the reptile species are there, and they cover, it is believed to be in Agastyamalai Hills in the extreme south. And the Western Ghats are faced with tremendous population pressure, forest of Western Ghats, okay? And at least 325 threatened species occur in the West Ghats, and it is about, I mean, it is present actually in the towards the south region, Western Ghats, and yeah, this is about the Western Ghats. Next, you have the Eastern Himalayas. When you talk about the Eastern Himalayas, now this is present in the Himalayan region. You all know the Himalayan hotspot actually is the home to the world's highest mountains, including the Mount Everest also. So this region is young, and it shows high altitudinal variation. And here you have about nearly 163 globally threatened species are present over here. Then different, including rhinoceros is there, wild Asian water buffalo, about 47 mammals are there, 50 birds, 17 reptiles, 12 amphibians, and 36 plant species are there. And about 10,000 plant species also present in this particular area. Then you have Indo-Burma hotspot. Indo-Burma hotspot is spread from eastern Bangladesh to Malaysia, including the northeastern states. And here, in recent years, 6 species of large mammals have been discovered in this particular area, like you have monkeys, langurs, and gibbons. And 1,300 bird species and about 13,500 plant species are existing in this particular area. So this is about the major hotspots of the India that are being present in the Indian continent. Okay. Now next is India versus India as a mega biodiversity nation. Okay, so India, they say actually it is considered to be a mega biodiversity nation because it has a varied number of what do you say, the biodiversity. So because of that reason, it is considered to be the 17 mega diverse nation, and it has got richest nation, especially with reference to a number of species. So about 8% of the world's biodiversity actually is being present in the India, and it is about home to about 5 World Heritage Sites. It ranks 10th among the plant richness countries. It ranks 6th among the center of biodiversity. The large number of species actually which are originated in India. So it has number of plants, number of animal species, and all those things. So and also large portion of Indian biodiversity is still unexplored. But if you do it, I think still it will become a major biodiversity nation. Okay. So this is about the biodiversity. I mean, India's, what do you say, the position as a mega biodiversity in the whole world. Now, coming to conservation of biodiversity, you all know what is conservation of biodiversity? Nothing but you have to sustain the development. You have to actually go for the conservation of biodiversity. Means you have to, whatever the, what do you say, the varied amount of organisms you have in the form of plants as well as animals need to be conserved. They need to be protected. So to conserve them, it is very, very essential. Why? Because without the wildlife and without the forest and all those things, the ecosystem will not function. So every organism, each and every organism and each and every plant species that is being present in the nature has got its own significance. It is very, very important because it plays a crucial role in the environment. So if all of them are present only, then only there will be an ecological balance. So if any one of them is being lost, then the balance will not be, it cannot be maintained. So then imbalance will be there. So when once the imbalance occurs, then definitely there will be a loss to the nature. So that is why keeping all these things in mind, the conservation strategies actually have been developed. You all know, have already told you that IUCN, that is international, what is organization, has been set up to conserve the biodiversity at the national, international level. So after that, one by one, at the national level also, several organizations have come up and they try to conserve the, what do you say, the both the plant as well as the animal species to maintain the ecological balance. Okay, so already we know it is one of the important tool for sustaining development. And two types of biodiversity conservation already we have seen. One is in situ conservation and the other one is ex situ conservation. In situ is, it is nothing but protection of the flora and fauna within the natural habitat or the ecosystem. And in situ, under in situ, you have different types, like you have biosphere reserves, national parks are there, wildlife sanctuaries are there. So already we have seen this. So biosphere reserves are, they cover so many large area. Best examples you can give for these biosphere reserves. Long-term survival of evolving system will be there. They can protect the endangered species. They can protect maximum number of species. They can serve also as a site of recreation and tourism, and it can also be used for research purpose and educational purpose. So biospheres function as an open system. Okay. Now, examples, you have national park is there, wildlife sanctuaries are there, green sanctuaries are there. So, okay. So, other projects for conservation of, what do you say, animals are also there. Okay. Now, advantages of this in situ are, you have, it is cheap and convenient, and its species will get adjusted definitely to their natural, what do you say, the environment, since they are living in the natural habitat. So, any calamity or any disaster is there, they can get adjusted to that disasters. Disadvantages is a large surface area actually is required for this, and maintenance is not proper due to shortage of staff. So this is the main disadvantage. Otherwise, it has got lot of advantages. Now, ex situ conservation is, it involves protection of flora and fauna outside their natural habitat. It involves maintenance and breeding of all these things. So methods for this is national barrier of plant, that is, you have genetic resources where you can go for the plant, what do you say, the species in the form of seeds or in the form of extracts, whatever you have, you can preserve them at minus degree centigrade by applying the cryopreservation technique. Okay. Then you have, what is that, genetic, animal genetic resources also. They are located at different places. They can also try to collect the eggs as well as the semen of the domesticated animals, and then they can preserve them in these organizations. And then national facility for plant tissue culture also is there, where you can also go about with the, what do you say, the conservation or the storage of these crop plants. So by with help of these, apart from this also you have what is there, zoological parks are there, then botanical gardens are there. So different types of, what is strategies are there whereby you can go about with the ex situ conservation. Now, coming to advantages, survival of endangered species is increasing due to special care, because they take a lot of care over here. There, with reference to the what do you say, in situ. In situ is there within their natural habitat, whereas ex situ is outside their natural habitat. So that is the reason why here more care is being taken. So survival of the endangered species actually is increasing. And also captive breeding is there. The animals can breed for longer duration, and also there is less, what do you say, competition is also there. And here that is the reason why they, I mean, advantages are more when compared to that of in situ. The disadvantages, it is an expensive method, of course, and the freedom of wildlife is lost over here, and the animals cannot survive in their natural habitat. So this is actually, these are the disadvantages. Now, endangered species of India, they have already given. So, Red Data Bank already, I think last class I have discussed what are the rare species, endemic species, factors affecting endemic species. Okay. So now this is all about now. I will try to. Hello, students. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
You are able to follow, no? Now I
Yes,
will
ma'am.
share. Yeah, I'll share another PPT. Then we will go to the next. Okay. So this is another PPT where already we have gone through. So extra information is given in this. So that is why we will just go through very fast. Structure of ecosystem already we have done. That is biotic structure and abiotic structure, producers, consumers, and all those things. Now here, functioning of an ecosystem also we have seen, like food chain and food web. So this is a food chain, this is food web. Ecological pyramid also I have talked about. That is with reference to pyramid of number, then pyramid of biomass, then pyramid of energy. Energy flow in an ecosystem also we have completed. Process of succession. I told you, no, that there are different stages. So here, ecological succession actually are named as hydrarch or hydroseed. It starts in a watery habitat. Mesarch actually starts in an adequate moisture, and xerarch or the zero seed or the lithoseed, you can say, in a area. Process of succession, we have already seen this, that nudation, invasion, competition, reaction, and climates. All these we have already completed. No. Biodiversity, we know genetic diversity, we have seen species diversity and ecosystem diversity. Now here they have given biogeographical classification of India based on the, the plants, number of the plants as well as the animals. So here biogeography deals with nothing but the physiogeography, sorry, phytogeography as well as the zoo geography. So different animals and the different plants that occupy the different geographical regions. So basically, they say there are about 10 biogeographical regions in India. So, and they have mentioned here the flora and the fauna, what is, okay. So this I will. Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Why some
Ma'am.
disturbance is coming? Okay. So here, so it deals with, so about 10 biogeographical regions of India, they have classified. And in these 10, what are the different types, where they are located, and what are the different types of flora and fauna? Flora means your what? What do you mean by flora and what do you mean by fauna? Flora is
Group
nothing
of
but the plant and fauna is
group of
nothing but the
plants.
animal. Yeah. Flora is plants and fauna means animals. So they
And
are mentioned over here, different types. So you can see this Trans-Himalayan zone. It is present in Upper Himalayas. Flora is deodars and fauna is snow leopard and musk deer. So likewise, about 10 they have mentioned. So this I will forward in the notes. Okay. So this is all about 10. The next is hotspots of Indian diversity. Now, just now we have mentioned about the different hotspots of Indian diversity, na? Like Indo-Burma, Western Ghats and Himalayan region. So where they are located, what are the important flora and what is the important fauna, where they are located. So this also we can take from here. And values of biodiversity already we have seen, that is consumptive use value, productive use value. Apart from that, you have social value, ethical value, aesthetic value. Then threats to biodiversity, same laws of habitat, poaching. Okay. Then man-wildlife conflict. Conservation of biodiversities. we have seen ex-situ and in situ. In situ is national parks, they have given mention, and ex-situ, all these things. Okay. So now we will go to now the aquatic, what do you say, ecosystem. What do you mean by aquatic ecosystem? I'll just forward another PPT. Yes, are you able to see, ma? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in your syllabus, you have about aquatic ecosystems. You all know what is an ecosystem, what are the two classification. I mean, ecosystem have been classified generally into two types. One is terrestrial and the other one is aquatic. In terrestrial, again, you have forest ecosystem, you can say, or land ecosystem, you can say, grassland ecosystem, different types. So likewise, in aquatic ecosystem also, you have different types. So aquatic ecosystem deals with the ecosystem which is present in the water. So it deals with the biotic community and abiotic components that are present in various water bodies. So in terrestrial ecosystem, you all know we have carbon dioxide, oxygen, they are present in gaseous form. But in aquatic ecosystem, they are available in dissolved state. No doubt we have oxygen and carbon dioxide is there, but they are actually present in a dissolved form. So depending upon the quality and the nature of water, the aquatic ecosystem are classified into three different types. That is freshwater ecosystem, marine ecosystem, and estuarine ecosystem. Okay. So now aquatic ecosystem is what? It is nothing but a ecosystem which is present in different aquatic bodies or the water bodies. Now, depending on the quality and nature of water, they have been classified into freshwater ecosystem, marine ecosystem, and estuarine ecosystem. Now, we'll see one by one what are the different types of aquatic ecosystem and what are the different types of, what do you say, the animals that are found, what are the conditions that are available in that particular ecosystem. Now, coming to the freshwater ecosystem. Now, freshwater ecosystem covers only 0.8% of the Earth's surface. Okay. And it ecosystem contains about 41% of the world's known fish species. And they perform many important environmental functions. What do? They recycle the nutrients, they purify the water, they attenuate the floods. Okay. And then they recharge the groundwater and also provide habitat for the wildlife. And they're also used for human recreation and also important for the tourism industry, especially in the coastal region. So these are some of the important functions you can say. And basically, there are three basic types of freshwater ecosystems. You can say lentic ecosystem, lotic ecosystem, and wetland ecosystem. Now, lentic ecosystem means they are called as slow-moving ecosystem. Means slow-moving water will be there, including pools as well as the ponds. Okay, or you can also say standing water. So here in this lentic water ecosystem, like you have pools and ponds. Now there what happens is you have, I mean, the ponds will be very, very small. The pools also very, very small. They will be. So here the water will be always standing. There is no inflow of water from here. Whatever the water that is available here, that water only will be there. You cannot get any water from it. And once it is full, it's full. That's all. Okay. So you will not get it. So such type of water, I mean the system, you can call it as the lentic system or you can call it as a standing water system. Okay, so here the water will be flowing, no doubt, but they have very slow moving. So it will not be always flowing. So it is only very slow moving. Example, pools and ponds. Lotic means rapidly moving water. For example, streams as well as the rivers. Because in the rivers and the streams, what is happening? The water will be, you will be getting the water. It will be always flowing. So always you'll be having the fresh water. So here it will be rapidly moving. So such type of ecosystem, you call it as a lotic ecosystem or freshwater ecosystem, where the water will be moving very, very fast. Example, you can take it as streams as well as rivers. Now, wetlands are what? They are areas where the soil is saturated with water or inundated for the least part of the time. So here you have the water content is very, very less. Actually, these are man-made. Wetlands are usually man-made. So there, here the soil will be saturated with water and they will be only for a shorter duration. So such type of ecosystem you call it as wetlands. So how many types of ecosystems you have? Freshwater ecosystem, three types. lentic, lotic, and wetlands. Remember that. Lentic example you can give it. They are slow moving pools and ponds. Lotic, streams as well as the rivers, and wetlands are nothing but here they are saturated soil. Here they are the areas where the soil is saturated with water only for a shorter period of time. Now, so freshwater ecosystems are further classified into two types. Just now I have told you, that is lentic like ponds and lakes or free-flowing type. So you can say standing type. Standing type means they always, the water will be standing. It will not move. I mean, it will be there, but it will not go out of it. Okay. So such we call it as a standing type. Lentic example you can give as ponds. Whereas lakes or free-floating type are the lotic type, like rivers. Okay. So we can also classify these freshwater ecosystems into two types, standing type as well as the free-floating type. Standing type are the examples are they are called as lentic type, example ponds, and the free-floating type are called as the lotic type. Okay, we can give them as the example. We can give them as the lakes. Now, pond ecosystem. Now we'll see. Now coming to the pond ecosystem. Now, pond ecosystem is a very, very small freshwater ecosystem. Here, the water is stagnant, and the ponds may be seasonal in nature. They receive enough, the water only during the rainy season. So they are usually shallow water bodies, and which play an important role only in the villages. And also, most of the activities actually will center around the pond, especially in the villages. And they contain several types of algae, aquatic plants, insects, fishes, and birds. And these ponds actually very often are exposed to the anthropogenic. Anthropogenic means human activity or human generated, the pressures. So such a ecosystem you call it as a pond. So pond ecosystem is a very small ecosystem. You can say the water will be stagnant. It will receive the water only during the rainy season, enough water only during the rainy season. And here, especially, the villages have small ponds, and the human activities will be taking, because in the villages, the population is very, very less. So they are very, less often, actually, they are exposed to the human, the pressures. So, but they contain several types of algae, insects, fishes, and the birds are also present in this. So this is about the pond ecosystem. So it is used for washing clothes, for bathing activities, for swimming, cattle bathing, and drinking. So therefore, definitely there is a chance of getting polluted. So it exhibits what self-sufficient and self-regulating system. Okay, so this is about the pond ecosystem. Now next is what lake ecosystem. Yes, are you able to follow, ma? All of you? Hello?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's clear, ma'am.
Okay. The next is what? Lake ecosystems. Now we are talking actually about the different types of aquatic ecosystems, because in your syllabus you have aquatic ecosystems. So we are concentrating only on the aquatic ecosystems, different types. We have just now seen pond ecosystem. Now we are going for the lake ecosystems. Okay. Now lakes are what? They are usually bigger when compared to the ponds. So they are big freshwater bodies with standing water, no doubt, and they have a shallow area, a zone called as a littoral zone, and open water zone where effective penetration of solar takes place, which is called as limnatic zone, and a deep bottom area where light penetration is very less, so called profundal zone. So when you take a lake into consideration, actually in the lake, there are freshwater bodies, no doubt, but they are standing water, I told you. Now here, they have three different zones. Okay, three different zones we can call. The bottommost zone, you call it as a profundal zone. In the profundal zone, light will not penetrate. Okay, so very light, almost it is negligible. Okay, and the uppermost you call it as a littoral zone, and in between the upper zone and the the profundal zone, you have another zone in between that we call it as nothing but the limnatic zone. So an open water zone where effective penetration of the solar light will take place. Okay, so this is about the lake ecosystem. So lake ecosystem consists of three types of zones: littoral zone, limnatic zone, as well as the profundal zone. Okay, so this is, but it is a standing water. It is a standing water system. Remember that. Like the pond, it is a standing water system. So here, see here. Now, this is the profundal zone, which is down. Okay, and the limnatic zone, actually you have this one in between, and the littoral zone, which you have on the top. So this is called as nothing but zonation in a lake ecosystem. Means lake ecosystem actually is divided into three different types of zones. One is called as the profundal zone, then you have limnatic zone, and then you have the littoral zone. So this is how you have to classify. So this is a rooted plant. So here, see this region, you can call it as, or they are classified, you can also call it as euphotic zone. And from here to here, aphotic zone. So euphotic zone is high productivity and aphotic zone, very little productivity. So this is how you have to name. So zonation in a lake ecosystem. Okay. Now, what are the different types of what is it, the life forms that you see in a lake ecosystem? Now, you have producers, consumers. Okay. Now, producers are what? Producers are the macrophytes. Okay. Once. Now, what are the different types of producers we see? So actually the producers are there, consumers are there in this lake ecosystem also. Producers are macrophytes like rooted plants or completely submerged plants. Then you also have phytoplanktons, and then you also have the lower plants. Now consumers are the heterotrophs which depend on this organic food and actually the food being manufactured by the green plant. And then you have, so in this consumers, they are being classified into different types, like you have benthos animals. Okay. Now, benthos animals are associated with the living plants and bottom forms. So you have benthos forms as well as the bottle forms. Bottom forms means they feed upon the plant remains lying at the bottom of a pond. They lie at the bottom, whereas benthos actually will be on the top. So here, the benthos forms feed on the plant remains, which lie at the at the down. Okay, like fishes, insects, larvae, beetles, mites, and crustaceans. So we can say consumers, producers are there in the form of macrophytes in the form of phytoplanktons and also lower plants. Consumers are nothing but heterotrophs. They are actually classified into two, like benthos animals and bottom form animals. Benthos animals actually are associated with the living plants, and the bottom forms actually are present at the bottom. They are basically called as detrivores. Example, you have the bottom of the pond called detrivores. So here fish, insect, larvae, beetles, mites, and crustaceans actually are associated. So they live on the top, and the detrivores are nothing but here in the form of the bacteria as well as the what do you say, the fungi you find in the form at the bottom forms. Okay, so this is about the what do you say, the fauna that is being present in the lake ecosystem. Now coming to the zooplankton. Zooplanktons, you all know, they feed on the phytoplankton. Example, protozoans. Then that we can call it as primary consumers. Now secondary consumers actually are the carnivores. They feed on primary consumers. Example, insects and fish. Then tertiary consumers are carnivores. Larger fish, you may take it as tertiary consumer, and they become the top consumers like that. Okay, and the small fish are considered to be herbivores. So like this. So we can say that in a lake we have what different types. So your phytoplanktons and the lower plants and all those things actually are the what producers. And when you talk about the consumers in the form of primary, secondary, and tertiary, now primary consumers actually are nothing but they are the zooplanktons. Then secondary consumers are the carnivores. You can take it as insects and the fish. And tertiary consumers, you can take larger fish. You can take it as a larger fish. Okay. So like that, the what do you say, the flora and fauna is being present in a lake ecosystem. Okay. Then next you have the decomposers. You can also call as a macro consumers. They bring about the decomposition of the dead organic matter, which is of both plants and animals, into simpler form. And they play a very important role. Example, bacteria. Then you have fungi like actinomycetes and different fungal, what do you say, the species that are found. So what do? They play a very, very, very important role, not only in decomposition of the dead organic matter, but also they try to recycle the mineral elements and again try to get it into the medium. So that is how actually the lake ecosystem will function. Now coming to abiotic component that is being present in a lake, you all know that is heat, light, pH, inorganic and organic compounds, and also the carbon dioxide, oxygen, calcium, as well as nitrogen, phosphates, and the amino acids. So this is about the what do you say, the biotic as well as the abiotic component that exists in a what do you say, the lake ecosystem. The next is what? The river ecosystem. In the river ecosystem, I told you it is always a floating ecosystem. So flowing water will be there in which all the living forms will be, they are adapted to this. And the community of flora and fauna also depends upon the clarity, flow, and oxygen content will be there. And here the river may be sandy, it may be rocky, or it may be muddy. And each type having its own species of the plants as well as animals. So when you compare the river ecosystem with that of the lake as well as the pond, now the river ecosystem actually is called as a flowing water ecosystem. And here you find rich biodiversity, and both the biotic as well as the abiotic component actually are enormous when compared to the river as well, lake as well as the pond. Now, biotic components, we'll see what are those. Now, producers, they include a number of phytoplanktons as usual. Now, consumers occur in the form of primary consumer, secondary consumer, and decomposers. Now, primary consumers are nothing but herbivores, and they feed on producers. Then secondary consumers are the carnivorous fishes. Tertiary consumers are again the top carnivorous fishes, and decomposers, as usual, you have the bacteria as well as the fungi. The abiotic component you have dissolved oxygen content will be there, light will be there, and temperature. So this is the different what do you say the the biotic as well as the abiotic component that we see in a river ecosystem. Then inside the river ecosystem, see, we have seen so many what do you say the organisms are there where you find it in the form of different what do you say the fishes are there. Okay, so even in water also you find the snakes, so they're like water snakes. So that is why they have given this turtles, tortoise, fishes, all there, alligators, and all those things. Okay, so this is about the what do you say the fauna of the river ecosystem. Now coming to the marine ecosystem. Now marine ecosystems in India are the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea, as well as the Bay of Bengal. So these are actually the current, because here in the marine water, why we call it as marine? Because the water will not be fresh, it will be somewhat salty. So that is why we consider it as the marine ecosystem. So the Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, as well as the Bay of Bengal are considered to be the marine ecosystem. Now here the producers vary from microscopic algae to large seaweeds, because here it is very, very big. So it is in the form of oceans. So here mostly the oceans will come, the Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal. So they vary from microscopic algae, okay, to the large seaweeds are there, and millions of zooplanktons will be there here. And a variety of invertebrates are also found, large number of invertebrates on which the fishes, turtles, as well as the marine mammals will live on. So you have a rich biodiversity in case of this marine ecosystem. Okay. Now, the next, then we will take an example of ocean ecosystem. Now, ocean ecosystem, if you take, marine ecosystems are among the Earth's aquatic ecosystem. So here they include the oceans, they include the estuaries, they include what? The lagoons. So mangroves and the coral reefs, the deep sea and the seafloor. So they include all these things. So all these will come under the ocean ecosystem. So oceans you may talk about, estuaries you may talk about, lagoons, mangroves, coral reefs, deep sea, as well as the seafloor. So here these are the gigantic reservoirs of water covering almost approximately 71% of the Earth's surface. Okay, and these ecosystems actually are different from that of a freshwater ecosystem, because here, as I have told you, the water will be somewhat salty, and here the salt concentration is usually about 3.5%, and the average temperature actually is 2 to 3 degrees centigrade. It is devoid of light, so totally devoid of light. So these are the samples here. Now, the various biotic component we'll see here is producers and consumers. Now, producers actually includes the phytoplanktons in the form of diatoms, dinoflagellate. Then you have large seaweeds, mainly belonging to algae like chlorophyceae, pheophyceae, rhodophyceae, and also angiosperms, okay, like Rupia, Zostera, and also the mangrove vegetation is there. So these all come under the producers. Then you have consumers in the form of primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now, primary consumers include what? Crustaceans, mollusks, and the fish. Secondary consumers include the carnivorous fishes like big fishes like herring and mackerel and all those things. And tertiary consumers are the top carnivorous fishes, which include the cod as well as the haddock. Okay, then decomposers, as usual, we have the bacteria as well as the fungi. So they are actually the uniform in almost any ecosystem. If you take, the decomposers will remain the same. Now coming to abiotic component, you have abiotic component, high amount of sodium, calcium, magnesium and potassium salt concentration will be there, and variable dissolved oxygen content will be there. Apart from that, light and temperature also plays a unique physiochemical conditions. So this is about the biotic as well as the abiotic component. See inside the marine or the ocean ecosystem, how it will be. So these are the different organisms. You can see the flora as well as the fauna. Now, even the coral reef plants. Now, in the coral reef plants, actually, see, this is the algae. Okay. Then you have, this is the green leaves. Then you have the red algae, and you have the brown algae. So these are the different, what do you say, the coral reef plants. Now, here, see, here big scales, ambus predator, okay, ctenophores related to jellyfish, the squid. So all these actually are nothing but the different, what do you say, the colonies of animals that you find it in a river ecosystem, that is fishery ecosystem. Crustaceans, different types of crustaceans, pteropods, big red. You see all these things. This is the anglerfish, snake dragon. So the different types of, what do you say, the fauna that you observe in a river ecosystem. Now, what are the threats to the aquatic ecosystem? Now, see, when you talk about the aquatic ecosystem, then definitely when it gets disturbed or what happens, it will result in pollution. So water pollution is a major threat to aquatic ecosystem, and it is because of sewage and poorly managed solid waste in the urban areas. Excessive use of fertilizers also will cause an increase in the nutrients, which leads to eutrophication. What is eutrophication? Eutrophication is nothing but organic enrichment. Okay. So eutrophication, what it will do, it will destroy the life in the water. And when once the eutrophication exceeds, what happens? Oxygen content will become lessened. So that is what we call DO, that is dissolved oxygen content. When it becomes lessened, it is severely reduced. Then the, what is it? Fauna, means the fishes, not only the fishes, the other organisms actually which are present in the aquatic habitat, they will get killed. So that is why it is the major threat to the aquatic ecosystem. So the different, what do you say, the causes are there which lead to this threat to the aquatic ecosystem. One is water pollution. Second is excessive use of fertilizers, then eutrophication. Even the pollutants, the pesticides also will pollute the water and kills major aquatic animals. Chemical pollution from the industries also will kill the large number of life forms in the aquatic habitat. Contamination by heavy metals and other toxic chemicals also will affect not only the aquatic habitat, but also the humans as we consume the fish and the other aquatic organisms. So in that way also humans also will get infected. So it is also a threat to the humans as such. Then over exploitation of resources. So these are the major threats to the aquatic ecosystems. And conservation of aquatic ecosystem is very, very essential. That is the reason. So for sustainable use of aquatic ecosystem, water pollution must be prevented. We should change the nature of aquatic ecosystem, means from a flowing water ecosystem to a static ecosystem. So changing the nature of the aquatic ecosystem will destroy the natural biological diversity. And then examples, construction of dams across the rivers will decrease the population of the species. And also protecting the wetlands. That means conversion to agricultural lands. So in one way, we can conserve, by following these methods, we can conserve the aquatic ecosystem. Okay, so these are the some of the, what do you say, the things we can know about what are the various reasons for the, what do you say, threats, for causing threat to the aquatic ecosystem, and what are the various conservation strategies we can follow to conserve the aquatic habitat. So this is all about the aquatic ecosystem. Yes, students? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Clear, ma'am.
Yes,
Is it
ma'am.
clear? Yeah. So with by today, we have finished the whole that what is that block is there? No, last block, unit block 4, I think. So ecology, we have completed everything. If you have any doubts, you can ask. So we have seen what is ecology, what is ecosystem, what are the different types of ecosystem. Then what do you mean by the functions of ecosystem, components of ecosystem? What do you mean by energy flow? Different functions. Then we have also talked about the conservation strategies, what is biodiversity. And also in your syllabus, I told you, you have the aquatic ecosystem in detail. So what are the different types of aquatic ecosystem? What are the different fauna and the flora that you find it over there? And how to conserve it. So these are the various, the topics that we have covered in that particular blog. If you have any doubt, you can ask. Any doubt?
No doubt, ma'am. It's clear, ma'am.
Okay. So I think first block and the last block almost we have finished with it. And then the next class, even in the second block we have started. I think talked about the coelom as well as the larvae. The other part of it we'll see in the next class. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
So shall we leave now?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay.